read the last section of the book in Quentin Tarantino's Cinema Speculation. It's been real fun. But all things must end at some point. And this is the last section called Floyd Footnote. I'm excited to finish off and finish the book. So, Rodolfo, thank you for being here for the entire read. Pretty awesome of you. Um, Pretty cool. And I'm just going to wait kind of like another minute before I get started here. See who else shows up. I have another book. Since I'm going to finish this one, I'm going to take a little, probably week break before I start another book. But I have another book. It's actually, I don't know if I should do it live or not. It's actually it's financing on making films. I don't know how interesting it's going to be. Uh, so I'm debating whether I should read it or not. If you think I should read it, I guess let me know. Um, but yeah, I haven't really decided if I'm going to read it out loud like I did this one. Just because this is interesting. This is Quentin Tarantino. The other book is more. I'm assuming the other book will be more. I don't know. Hey, what's up? Hey, Jimmy Roy's. What's up, man? Been a minute. So, I guess I'm going to get started here in a second. Let's do it, shall we? Let's finish the last section of the book. It's called Floyd Footnote. So, who exactly was this Floyd character I was referring to earlier? His name was Floyd Ray Wilson, and he was a black guy of about 13'7", who, for about a year and a half in the late 70s, lived in my house. He used to date my mom's best friend, Jackie, and he hung around in their circle. Years earlier, from time to time, he would visit the apartment my mom and I shared with her roommates, Jackie and Lillian. And every time he came by it, it was exciting because I thought Floyd was really cool and I could talk movies with him. And since he was a hip guy who saw a lot of shit, he could keep up, at least compared to the adults I knew. He especially knew all the action movies and the blaxploitation films. I remember when Jackie introduced us, I was 10. She said, "Quentin, Floyd's who you should talk to about movies. He knows as much as you." So I, a 10-year-old white boy, started testing this grown ass black man on his knowledge of black movies. "Do you know who Brenda Sykes is?" I tested. "Of course I do," he said. I told him, "I think she's the prettiest black actress in movies." "You're damn right she is," he answered. "Do you know who James A. Watson is?" I asked. "Yes," he said. "Wow, that's pretty good. I thought he mostly does TV." "What's your favorite Jim Kelly movie?" Again, I test. If he answered Enter the Dragon, he's just like everybody else. Three, the hard way, obviously, he answered correctly. Lillian just stared at the two of us and said to the room, "I don't know who any of these people are." So from that moment on, whenever Floyd visited the apartment, it was particularly like a holiday for me because finally I was going to be able to talk to somebody about movies who knew what the fuck I was talking about. So when Floyd would come over, I attached myself to him like a stick, like a tick. But also during this time, I realized the hard way that Floyd was a flaky guy who couldn't be counted on. On at least two occasions when Floyd was visiting, he played the big man and told me he'd come over next Saturday and take me to the movies. Oh boy, I thought, not just talking about movies with Floyd, but actually going to the movies with Floyd. But when Saturday came, no Floyd, no call, no "I'm sorry," no excuse, just no show. He either forgot or he just didn't give a shit. I was so excited too. If Floyd visiting the apartment was a holiday, this was going to be Christmas. And as The hours passed, and I waited and waited for the buzzer to buzz on the intercom of our apartment, and it got later and later. I finally realized he wasn't coming. I wasn't mad. I was heartbroken. I also realized Floyd wasn't as great a guy as I thought he was. I didn't even think of myself as a kid, but even I knew you didn't do that to a kid. But I forgave Floyd and played it cool next time he came by. And a few visits later, he promised to take me out again. I said, yeah, sure. And without mentioning the last time, I made sure when he left that he remembered that we had plans and I'd be waiting for him. He said, of course, no problem. See you Saturday. And the fucking guy did it to me again. But this time I wasn't heartbroken. I felt lousy, but not crushed. It was just now I knew who Floyd really was. And when he came over again, I didn't confront him with his bordering on cruel behavior. I didn't bring it up, and we still had a great conversations, and I still really dug talking to him. I just knew not to try and make plans with him because he was an adult I couldn't count on. I also promised myself when I grew up I'd never do that to a kid. Cut to 1978. I'm 15, going on 16. My mom's work is requiring her to spend more and more time away from the house, or she wanted to, and that was a good excuse, so she ran with it, which happened to coincide with the age I started getting in trouble a lot, fights in school, ditching, and staying out later and later. There wasn't necessarily a correlation between these two events. I was just a young, wise guy who thought he was tough. So my mom rented Floyd a spare room in her house with the proviso that he keep an eye on her 16-year-old son, which worked for me because I still thought Floyd was the coolest. Yeah, years ago he stood me up, but since that time I had gone through the whole trauma of being sent to Tennessee and put in the care of hillbilly alcoholics. So by that time, Floyd being a flake was easy to forgive, but it equipped me with two pieces of information that would prove valuable as our relationship moved forward. One, I couldn't count on Floyd, and if I ever did, be aware he probably let me down. And two, I cared more for Floyd than Floyd cared for me. Knowing how much I dug Floyd, I'm sure my mom thought she came up with the perfect solution for the what to do with Quentin problem. At the time, I don't think she was aware of, though I think Jackie knew, what a shady cat Floyd really was, nor did she consider the ramifications of having her very impressionable young son spend so much time around such a sketchy dude. It was sort of like moving Sam Jackson's character in Jackie Brown or Del Robbie into your home and having him look after your 16-year-old boy for over a year. Not that I had any problem with it. Floyd could be mercurial and he could get irritated easily, but I dug him. He lived an interesting vagabond life. He told great stories. He was funny as hell, and I drank in all the hustler, male centric, streetwise wisdom. Floyd grew up in the 50s in Catahoula, Louisiana, and it was interesting listening to him recount pop culture history from his perspective. He told me about being a little boy and going to the Saturday matinee and seeing the Cowboys for a nickel. His favorite was the man in black, Lash LaRue. Lash LaRue was extremely popular in the South. Like Johnny Cash, he dressed all in black, but he also carried a bullwhip and wasn't shy about using it. In the book about the Gower Gulch matinee cowboy stars, the Sunset Corral, it described LaRue as looking like a cowboy Bogart. His sidekick was a very funny Gabby Hayes type with a face full of whiskers called Fuzzy St. John. And Floyd told me about going to see a Lash LaRue picture when he was 9, and both Lash and Fuzzy made a personal appearance at his neighborhood cinema. This was back when the movie theaters were segregated and the black kids had to sit up in the balcony. But those are the best seats, I said. And he said, that's what we thought. But if these dumb motherfuckers think they're gonna put us down by giving us the best seats in the house, fine by me. He said that Lash and Fuzzy were on stage talking about all the kids in the audience, pointing out at the white boys on the bottom level. In his cantankerous accent, Fuzzy said, we got some real tough looking cowpokes in the audience today. Then, pointing out the girls in attendance, Lash added, and some mighty pretty does. Then Fuzzy pointed up at the balcony and said with a twinkle, and them the Bucks. Floyd said the whole place laughed, but for different reasons. The white kids thought Fuzzy was making fun of the black kids, but the black kids knew Fuzzy was calling them badasses. Floyd was still a kid at the first time he saw Elvis when he was on the Tommy Dorsey show, and he said the next day at school everybody was talking about it. Did you see the wild white boy on TV last night? Once I asked him what was he doing when he was my age, he said, walking around trying to look as much like Elvis Presley as I could. His other favorite at the time was Jackie Wilson. He'd act out seeing Jackie when he was a teenager on stage singing Lonely Teardrops. Floyd told me Elvis said, if Jackie Wilson was white, he'd be twice as big as me. Now, I don't know if Elvis ever really said that, but Floyd said he did. There was a rumor going around in the black community that back in the 50s, somebody asked Elvis what he thought of colored folks. And Elvis said, all they can do is shine my shoes and buy my records. Floyd didn't buy that shit at all. Elvis never said that shit. Then I said, but so-and-so said he heard him say it. So-and-so never heard that shit. He came back, so-and-so is a fucking liar. I was all ears about this first-hand rock and roll history because I wasn't into 70s white boy rock. I didn't give a fuck about Kiss. I didn't give a fuck about Aerosmith. I didn't give a fuck about Alice Cooper or Black Sabbath or Jethro Tull. I didn't own Frampton Comes Alive. I openly rejected that entire culture. At 16, I think I heard of Bruce Springsteen, but I never heard Bruce Springsteen. I was into 50s rock and roll, no, not 60s, not the Beatles, not Jimi Hendrix, not Bob Dylan, that would come later, but 50s rock and roll and 70s soul music. Elvis and Stevie Wonder, Eddie Coltrane and Bootsy Collins, Gene Vincent and Parliament, the Five Satins and Rufus, Jackie Wilson and Rick James, the Coasters and the Commodores, Chuck Berry and Barry White, Brenda Lee and Tina Marie, Curtis Mayfield and the Impressions, and the Curtis Mayfield that did the Superfly soundtrack. Well, that just happened to be Floyd's wheelhouse too. It was great watching something like Floyd Matrux's American Hot Wax with Floyd. One, he explained to me who Screaming Jay Hawkins was, and he laughed at the fellow who was supposed to be D. Clark. And he remarked about Tim McIntyre, who was playing disc jockey Alan Freed. Alan Freed didn't look nothing like that motherfucker. He liked American Hot Wax, but he didn't like the Buddy Holly story. They tried to make Buddy Holly bigger than he was. Nobody gave a fuck when Buddy Holly died. Now, Richie Valens and the Big Bopper, that was a loss. I remember when I told him after Buddy Holly, Richie Valens, and the Big Bopper died, they replaced them with Bobby V on the remaining concert dates. Floyd smiled and said, man, those must have been some real disappointed people. And we both burst out laughing. He introduced me to Howlin' Wolf. In fact, as I'm proofreading this page right now, I'm listening to Howlin' Wolf and thinking about Floyd. He introduced me to George Thorogood and played his second album, Move It On Over, all the time. He liked Johnny Cash, but he used to joke, I don't listen to Johnny around the brothers. He had one Bob Dylan album, Bringing It All Back Home, but he only listened to one song, Gates of Eden. But he listened to it all the time. He taught me who the abolitionist John Brown was. John Brown was his favorite American. He knew a lot about him, and over the year we were together, he told me John Brown's whole story and made it damn entertaining. His two favorite historical characters were John Brown and General George Patton, and he quoted the both of them a lot. He served in the army with Frankie Lyman. Back in the day, he dated Joey Heatherton for a while and used to know Bobby Poole, the screenwriter of The Mac. He said incredulously, that ugly motherfucker wanted to play Goldie. Ain't nobody with good sense making a movie with that motherfucker as the Mac. He saw all the black exploitation movies when they came out. Floyd on the spook who sat by the door. That movie was way too heavy for Hollywood. They had to shut that shit down. Floyd on the Mac. If Max Julian were white after the Mac, he'd be the biggest motherfucker in Hollywood. Floyd on Jim Brown. People say Jim Brown can't act. I say I don't go to Jim Brown movies to see good acting. If I want to see good acting, I'll go watch Marlon Brando. I go to see Jim Brown movies to see Jim throw a motherfucker out a window. Floyd on 100 Rifles. You went to that movie to see Jim Brown? Fuck Raquel Welch. But Burt Reynolds stole that motherfucking movie. Floyd on Sidney Poitier. Sidney Poitier is a good actor, but he played them nice guy patch blue roles too long. Now I understand it. He had to play those roles so other motherfuckers could play other parts. But he done it too long. So when he's in Buck and the Preacher, you're like, so what now? You're this dude now? Nah, man, you done played that other shit too long. I can't buy you in this Jim Brown shit. You ain't that guy. You're the motherfucker from Guess Who's Coming to Dinner. Floyd on Bill Cosby. Bill Cosby ain't been a good actor since I Spy. And on I Spy, Cosby wasn't shit next to Culp. Floyd on Charles Bronson. I'll see any movie starring Charles Bronson because I know Bronson's going to be good. Floyd's 5 favorite actors: Marlon Brando, George C. Scott, Peter O'Toole, Charles Bronson, William Marshall. Floyd on William Marshall. Greatest Shakespearean actor in America. Marshall's voice was so magnificent, they used him to dub white dudes. He's the guy who played Blackula. Now, don't get me wrong, he's good in Blackula. The movie wouldn't be shit without him, but he's better than motherfucking Blackula. He had to do that shit to get a name. Later, when I'd watch William Marshall play the king of cartoons on Pee-wee's Playhouse, I'd always think of Floyd. Floyd liked Richard Pryor in movies, but he didn't consider him an actor. He's a comedian. He ain't no actor. For a comedian, he's a good actor, but he ain't no actor. But Harry Belafonte, he took serious as an actor, especially in his character roles like Buck in The Preacher, Uptown Saturday Night, and The Angel Levine, which he was a big fan of. His 5 favorite movies starred 3 of his favorite actors. In fact, they're why they were his favorite movies. Floyd's top 5 movies: The Godfather, hands down, top of the list. The Lion in Winter, Patton, Pandora, and The Flying Dutchman, Cloney Brown. Yes, a Lubitsch movie made on Floyd's top 5, though I'm positive he never knew Lubitsch by name, which I think Ernest might appreciate even more than if he did. During this year, 1978, some of 1979, Floyd and I saw a lot of movies together, both at the theaters and on TV, pay movie channel. The movies I can remember: Eaten Alive, especially the parts with Robert Englund as Buck; American Hot Wax; Blood Brothers. He especially loved the part when Robert Englund fucks Kristen DeBell on the couch; Journey into the Beyond; Paradise Alley; Animal House; Fingers. He loved the head clunking scene; The Boys and Company; See, Go to Go to the Spartans; Days of Heaven; Invasion of the Body Snatchers, Kaufman version; Dawn of the Dead. He was blown away; The Private Files of J. Edgar Hoover. He thought Michael Parks was a great Bobby Kennedy; Death on the Nile; Blue Collar; Eyeball; Autopsy; The Boys from Brazil; Brass Target. He saw it because George Kennedy played Patton in it. Who Stopped the Rain? Thank God It's Friday; Rocky 2; Time After Time; The Wanderers; and Apocalypse Now. We also devotedly watched the miniseries Centennial, and he loved Robert Conrad's French fur trap character, Pasquinel. Best thing that motherfucker ever did. And we watched Franco Zeffirelli's miniseries Jesus of Nazareth, and he thought Rod Steiger stole the show as Pontius Pilate. But of all the movies we saw together, his number 1 favorite was The Deer Hunter. Now, that was a great movie. Floyd dug all the big comedians of the day: Richard Pryor, George Carlin, Flip Wilson, Red Fox, but He thought Steve Martin was silly, nor could Floyd wrap his head around the fact that Rudy Ray Moore was starring in the kung fu movies. When Rudy came out with The Human Tornado, I asked him, did he know who this kung fu star Rudy Ray Moore was? Floyd looked at me as if I had lost my goddamn mind. I know who Rudy Ray Moore is, but the Rudy I know ain't starring in no damn kung fu movies. But there were two comedic actors I saw break Floyd down laughing more than anybody else. One was Willie Best. If you don't know who Willie Best is, it's because for the last 30 years he's been effectively erased from the film history. He was a young, skinny black comedian actor from mostly the 40s that started getting some big roles in comedies opposite some big name farceurs. The reason you might not be familiar with Best is because his comedic character, the black man that's scared of his own shadow, has to say the least, gone out of favor. And if you just look at the names of some of the characters he performed, Sambo, Algernon, Woodrow, Sunshine, Chattanooga, Brown, they don't bode well for his filmography. Best did do his share of insulting, slow-witted, mush-mouthed black caricatures, especially in High Sierra. But not all Willie Best's performances were created equal. Best was a very skilled comedian and was very popular with black Americans in the 40s and even into the 50s. Yes, his comedic persona was that of the shaking like a leaf coward, but stick that character in a haunted house like they did opposite Bob Hope in the Ghost Breakers or Eddie Bracken and Hold That Blonde. Now you got just a funny guy. Is Best really any different from Jerry Lewis in Scared Stiff or Lou Costello in Hold That Ghost? Yes, he's a little different, but not by much. And many times the black audiences of the 40s and 50s appreciated the difference. When black folks watched Hollywood movies in those days, they were used to seeing a world that hadn't any relation to their lives. But Willie Best, partly because he was so young, would make cool hip references which sailed over the head of the floor level white audiences, but made direct hits in the balcony. White audiences always found it disconcerting when the black folks in the balcony laughed at something they didn't get. This was Mantan Moreland's speciality too. As he was goofing around next to Charlie Chan, he was also creating a private dialogue with black audiences. Floyd was very pragmatic about the black performers from that time. They did what they had to do. I once put down Stepan Fetchit. He asked me, haven't you ever seen Stepan Fetchit? No, I answered. I don't think so, he said. I didn't think so. Don't be so quick to make judgments about people stuck in situations you can never understand. I got no problem with Stepan Fetchit. Those were the only roles he could get, so he did them. And by doing those roles, became the wealthiest black man in America. Fuck those motherfuckers. Say he shuffled. Yeah, he shuffled his black ass all the way to the motherfucking bank. Floyd didn't understand why they didn't air the Amos in Andy show on reruns like they did other shows he grew up with from the 50s. That was a funny show. How is Amos and Andy degrading? How is Kingfish degrading? When I was a kid, I thought he was the baddest motherfucker on the box. They lived well, they dressed nice, Kingfish had his own business, and they didn't walk around calling each other nigger. What's the problem? But it was watching the George Marshall comedy Hold That Blondie late one night on KTLA, Channel 5, starring Eddie Bracken, Veronica Lake, and Willie Best that I saw Floyd laugh like I never saw him laugh before. Willie Best played Eddie Bracken's manservant, Willie, and Willie's antics cracked Floyd up the whole movie. But the whole climax, when Eddie and Willie go to investigate the supposedly haunted house, that's the sequence that physically doubled Floyd up on the couch in hysterics. At that point, every single thing Willie did crack Floyd up. It's a really funny movie. George Marshall was a terrific comedy director, and movies with haunted house set pieces were sort of his forte. And personality, Hold That Blonde is my favorite. But Floyd's favorite comedy actor, Don Knotts. Floyd would watch an episode of the Andy Griffith Show and howl with laughter at everything Don Knotts as Barney Fife did. I remember Floyd both describing and acting out for me the Don Knotts haunted house comedy, The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, with the same enthusiasm that Peter Bogdanovich had for Buster Keaton or Francois Truffaut had for Jerry Lewis. Don Knotts just tickles me, is what Floyd would say. Once Floyd and I were in a pizza parlor, a gay 90s joint, sawdust on the floor, player piano in the corner playing a jaunty piano roll, and they were projecting a series of Charlie Chaplin shorts on the wall from a 16 millimeter projector. Floyd poured a glass of beer from a pitcher, glanced over the image of the little tramp projected on the wall, and sneered, "That motherfucker's never made me laugh. Folks say that is a comic genius. Not to me, he ain't. Just look at his shit. It ain't funny. Now you want to know who's a comic genius? Don Knotts is a motherfucking comic genius. Don Knotts make you laugh. Don Knotts might be the funniest motherfucker in the whole wide world. Compared to Don Knotts, Charlie Chaplin ain't shit." And it was from watching Willie Best and Don Knotts from Floyd's perspective that made me realize how similar to each other their comedic personas were. Is the shaking, scared black man a stereotype of an earlier time? Yes, it was. It's also an attribute of many white comedians of the time: Jerry Lewis, Bob Hope, Danny Kaye, Lou Costello, and no more so than Don Knotts. When Knotts did a remake of Bob Hope's The Paleface, it was titled The Shakiest Gun in the West. Meanwhile, Don Knotts is respected as one of the most beloved comedians in the history of television, whereas Willie Best doesn't get any respect. Naturally, it's a question of context. Even in Willie Best's most legit studio film outings, his shaky subordinate was usually the only black character on display, while Don Knotts shared the screen with a cast of able white characters, and he still ended up the hero and got the girl, even as a fish. Nevertheless, the almost identical nature of their two comedic personas brings up two questions. If Don Knotts were black, he couldn't be Don Knotts. And if Willie Best were white, would he still be a disgrace or a legend? During this time, the only family I had around me was my mom. But to us, her close circle of friends were our family. Her best friend Jackie was like my second mom. Her friend Lillian was like my aunt. Jackie's brother Don was like my uncle. Jackie's daughter Nikki was like my sister. And they all looked out for me. Floyd, in his own way, looked out for me too. The difference between Floyd and them was, while they loved me, Floyd didn't give a shit about me. Don't get me wrong, Floyd liked me. We had a good time together. He liked telling his stories to me. He liked being admired by a young boy, and he liked handing out his sage wisdom to open ears. You see, a guy like Floyd could like you and simultaneously not give a fuck whether you lived or died. One doesn't contradict the other. If you're a guy like Floyd, not to say Floyd didn't have affection for me, but he was always looking out for number one, and that wasn't me. And it wasn't the worst thing in the world to hang around an adult who didn't treat you with kid gloves, who told you like it is without too much concern for your feelings. For one thing, Floyd never lied to me. Yeah, maybe about some of the shit he said he did in the past, like that Joey Heatherton shit, but he never lied to me about me. He didn't care enough about me to lie to me. Obviously, sometimes that hurt my feelings, but through Floyd, I received an authentic glimpse of the impression I was making on others. Once Floyd and I went to the Del Amo Mall with a young girl I was dating, and while there we caught a movie. Later, Floyd told me, "When you take a woman to the movies, don't buy all that candy shit. It makes you look childish." Well, on one hand, I was childish. On the other, I wanted to grow up. And Floyd gave me some unvarnished masculine advice. Not all of it was correct. On account of Floyd, it took me a few years before I broke down and ate. No man has to do that shit. But that was for me to work out for myself. Now, when Floyd moved out in 1979, my initial memory is I never saw him again. But that can't be correct because I remember seeing the movie American Gigolo with Floyd, and that didn't come out till 1980. So I guess we kept in touch somewhat, enough to go to a movie together. But when Floyd moved out, for the most part, he was gone, never to be seen or heard from again. And that was the story of Floyd. I didn't hold it against Floyd for not keeping in touch. By the time I knew what kind of guy Floyd was, so I didn't expect anything else. Also, I'm sure he had had enough of me. And by that time, he had done things to disenchant everybody in our circle. He was persona non grata with my mom due to some jewelry in a pawn shop, and I'm sure other things I wasn't aware of. Jackie was done with him, and her daughter Nikki hated him and ran him down all the time. Nevertheless, Floyd Ray Wilson left a lasting impression on the 15 and 16-year-old boy he mentored in the year of 1978, as well as a bit of a legacy he never could have imagined. What exactly Floyd did for a living all these years was open to wild speculation. He never had a career. He just moved from one situation to another, some more lucrative than others, for most of his life. Like everybody I've ever met like him, he always had stories of the days when he was living the high life, dating Joy Hertherton and driving a yellow Stingray. If he's 37 years old, moving into his old girlfriend's best friend's spare room and made to keep a lookout on her teenage son, he wasn't doing so well. But you never know it to at or talk to him. Floyd didn't have any serious bad habits. He didn't take drugs. He didn't even smoke weed, as far as I could tell. Nor did he have a drinking habit. I don't just mean he wasn't a drunk. I mean, he didn't need a drink or a couple of glasses of wine to unwind at the end of the day. But he wasn't a recovering alcoholic either. He drank a beer or a glass of whiskey when he was out. Not that any of those things are serious bad habits, but it's a little unusual he didn't develop a recreational reliance on at least one of them. He did have a job when we lived together. He worked the night shift at the post office, which was a pretty good job for a vagabond type guy, as anyone who's read Charles Bukowski's novel Post Office can tell you. Floyd was a very personable guy, yet he never had friends from the old days visit him, which I can't say rang any bells back then. But now I think it's due to the fact he didn't have any old friends. People were in Floyd's life for a while and then they weren't. Usually it was probably a burnt bridge situation or he just disappeared one day, leaving nothing but a memory. He did have friends who came to the house every once in a while and hung out, but they were work buddies from the post office, and they were good guys who I liked and remember fondly. Nickelberry and Tulliver, in early attempts at scriptwriting their names, would find their way in. Nickelberry looked a bit like Montel Williams, and Tolliver looked a lot like Sonny Liston. Floyd called me Quint, but he always called them by their last names. Floyd might have been a vagabond and a scrounger and an opportunist, but he did have an ambition. He wanted to be a screenwriter. By the time he moved into my house, he had written two screenplays and one novel, and we spent many hours discussing his screenplays during the year he lived with me. The novel, which I never read, was a romance set in Roman times featuring two black characters titled Demetrius and Desiree, which Nikki claimed was plagiarized. I saw that goddamn book in the store once. I just laughed. That fakey motherfucker. Floyd's two screenplays were the first two screenplays I ever read. One was a horror film titled The Mysterious Mr. Black. The Mysterious Mr. Black, Floyd admitted, was inspired by the Sidney Poitier movie Brother John about the second coming of Christ, but as a black man in Mississippi. But Mr. Black wasn't Christ. He was the vengeful spirit of a former slave out to punish the descendants of the white slave owners who performed some ghoulish experiment on him 100 years earlier. That suit-clad Mr. Black, distinguished by his dignified manner and his mastery of languages, suddenly showed up in town one day and interrogated himself in the highest echelons of Upper New Orleans high society, meeting and targeting the wealthy and powerful descendants of the families whose fortunes were built on the pain and suffering of black flesh, and then, Omen style, causing their death in grand, glorious set pieces. Okay, I'm making this screenplay sound a little better than it was. I only read it once about 45 years ago, so I'm not sure how much is memory and how much is me filling in to complete the picture. I remember it being a little dry, but that was the basic idea. And no doubt, Mr. Black was a damn cool character. Floyd's choice for Mr. Black, Harry Belafonte. But the script I loved, and was the first script I ever read, was Floyd's epic Western saga, Billy Spencer. Floyd was a big fan of Westerns, and his mammoth screenplay was basically every moment he loved from his favorite Westerns all rolled up into one story, and featuring an incredibly cool black cowboy named Billy Spencer. In the script, which was similar to a Marvel comic I liked called Gunhawks, the Spencers, owners of the most powerful ranch in the territory, find the baby of a runaway slave in the desert, decide to keep the child and raise it as their own son. A few years later, Miss Spencer has a son, Tracy. Yeah, I know Spencer's Tracy, but I didn't put that together back then. And Billy and Tracy grew up together, the best of friends, a dynamic duo. The script didn't really have one story, just a lot of different adventures for Billy and Tracy and the Spencer clan. Mother Spencer and the tough father were great characters, and there was never even a hint of ambiguity when it came to their love and devotion for Billy or his for them. The mother and the father made no distinction between Tracy and Billy. As long as the screenplay was, Floyd wasn't finished yet. He kept coming up with different adventures, situations to stick into the script. I remember when we watched the Muhammad Ali and Chris Christopherson miniseries Freedom Road, Floyd thinking maybe Billy Spencer should be a miniseries. He felt like Charlton Heston or Burt Lancaster should be the old man Spencer, and he thought Peter Fonda should be Tracy. But he strongly felt Billy Spencer should be an unknown. When I read it, I always saw the actor Thomas Carter. I don't remember the villains, but at some point, a range war develops, and in a scene taken from Public Enemy, Tracy is murdered by the bad guys, and his fucked up dead carcass is dropped off at the Spencer's front door. The scene was genuinely powerful, and Floyd would act it out, so I got the full effect, and I did. After reading the massive screenplay, I did fall in love with the Tracy Spencer character, and his death was devastating, especially the detail that it was his mother who opened the door to find the mutilated corpse of her son. Floyd would act this out to maximum effect. Of course, he'd seen Public Enemy. Once the bad guys murder his brother, Billy knows it's time to leave the safety of the Spencer Ranch behind and kill every single member of the bad guys' gang. So, donning a poncho, which represents his now solitary existence, he rains hell on the bad guy camp with a bow and arrow and dynamite and his lightning fast pistol. Riding off, never able to return back to his home, to wherever the trail takes him. Sound familiar? Okay, not a single scene, situation, idea, or image that was in that screenplay was in my script for Django Unchained. Yet, the essence of what Floyd was trying to accomplish in that script, an epic western with a black heroic cowboy at its center, was the very heart of what I was trying to accomplish with Django Unchained. But even more influential than any one script was having a man trying to be a screenwriter living in my house. Him writing, him talking about his scripts, me reading it, made me consider for the first time writing movies. The reason I knew how to even format a screenplay was from reading Floyd's screenplays. It would be a long road from that year of 1978 to me completing my first feature length screenplay, True Romance, in September 1987. But due to Floyd's inspiration, I tried writing screenplays. I usually never got that far. I think page 30 was by far the furthest I ever got, but I tried and eventually succeeded. What happened to the script of Billy Spencer? Nothing. I doubt any really serious entity has ever read it, and I'm fairly positive not a single copy of it exists anymore. I'm sure at the time of his death, Floyd was the only one who still had a copy of it, and whenever he died, wherever he was, it was disposed of with the rest of his meager possessions, the fate of most vagabonds. And whatever trash can it was tossed into was the final resting place of Floyd Ray Wilson's dream of a black cowboy hero named Billy Spencer. My dream of a black cowboy hero, Django Unchained, was not only read, it was made by me into a worldwide smash. A smash that resulted in me winning the Academy Award for Best Original Screenplay. By the time I walked up to the podium and accepted that little gold man with Dustin Hoffman and Charlize Theron standing behind me, Floyd was long since dead. I don't know how he died, where he died, or where he's buried, but I do know I should have thanked him. There you go. The rest is just the index. But there you go. That's the last section of the book. Done and done. It's just about a 400-page book right there, somewhat. Done it, though? What's up, Typhoneer? He's up. It does really explain a lot about Tarantino, doesn't it? Pretty interesting stuff. I think he really wanted to explain himself because I think there's a lot of people who misunderstand him. And so he wanted to clear up some things. I think he did that, especially with the last chapter. But his understanding of, and I think it was interesting that I would have never guessed that Floyd would have been a screenwriter. You know, he never mentioned, he only mentioned how he went to movies with him, but he never mentioned until the last section that he was trying to be a screenwriter, which is, that's pretty far out. That's pretty far out that was his first encounter with a screenplay or somebody trying to do a screenplay, and at the same time was going to watch movies and break them down, discuss them. I mean, that's what filmmakers do, you know? That's what a filmmaker does. You watch movies, you discuss them, you break them down. Then, you know, at some point, you get some inspiration. For Quentin, it was Floyd. But at some point, as a moviegoer, if you're inspired enough, you're going to try your own screenplay. It was a great read. I agree. This beast. Anyways, yeah, that's the last one. Last one. I'm glad it's done, though. I don't think I could do any more reads. I mean, it's pretty long, but it is great. I will say that. And I think he's writing another one. I could be wrong, but I think I overheard something that he was going to write another one, so that could be interesting. But yeah. Thanks everybody who stuck with me for the read. If you've missed any of the sections, they're actually available. All the live reads are available. If you go to a playlist called Collection of Books I Read for Free, you'll see it there. All the sections are available. 18 of them. I had other books that I read, but I mostly took them down because I'm, you know, little afraid of copyright issues, but you know, I'm mostly afraid of it once I get monetized as a channel, which I'm not monetized. So just in case, you know, I took them down. But you know, these reads, the live reads I have right now of this book, I'll probably keep up there for a long while until I get monetized, and then I'll have to take them down because it is technically copyrighted material, you know. But you could read things in the public domain. Yes, I could. Huh? I could. But anyways, yeah, pretty incredible book, man. Ladies and gents, pretty incredible book. Quentin Tarantino. he's a he's a father. He's married now. Did you guys know that? He's married and has a kid. Did you guys know that? I didn't know. I found that out a couple days ago watching a video that was like a few months old or something like that. But that's good. That's good, Rodolfo. That's cool. You're writing something. That's pretty cool. I'm currently writing a script. It's a compilation of 10-minute short films. They're each exactly 10 minutes. And I think it's going to be about, I don't know, no longer than 8 short films. So I've been working on that. I have 3 done, and so I have like 3 other ideas that are spinning in my head that I want to write out. Yeah, I'll yeah, sure, I'll read them. I'll read the scripts at some point. Yeah, it's a good idea. I'll read them out. See if you guys what you guys think of them. That way you can tell me. But yeah, I am glad it's finally done. This thing is a beast. Look at this thing. It is a freaking beast, but good. Oh, really? That's still pretty cool. That's still pretty cool. Well, I guess I'll leave it at that. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's done. It's finally done. I'm gonna take a break from reading at least a week. It's been pretty. I don't know. It's exhausting. Not at the beginning, but it got pretty exhausting. I'm not gonna lie. These things are. You know what's funny though? So this took about a bit over 2 weeks to read, reading every day, right? Did you know that there's kids in universities? We're talking like the elite universities who won't even read a book. Like they just think it's too much. Isn't that funny? Look at what we just read. Look at what we just read. This massive beast of a book. But it is Quentin Tarantino, so a little bit more interesting than probably some other books. But all their own taste, I guess. Yeah, it's true. I was reading something about that. I saw some videos about uh, kids. They complain. They don't want to. They complain. They go to these colleges. They complain. They don't want to read the books. They've never been forced to read a book, and you're just like, are you kidding me? You're in an elite college. You're expected to have read books, and to be able to read books in a couple of weeks. But you know, and I did what? I did a chapter at a time. And sometimes it would take 20 minutes, sometimes it'd take an hour or less, It's not that difficult. You know, if I wasn't doing it live, if I wasn't reading this live and I was just reading on my own, I could probably read this in 2, 3 days. Kid you not. I kid you not. Anyways, I'll leave it at that. Thanks for joining me, Rodolfo. I'm pretty sure you're here like every single day for the reads. Pretty cool. Pretty impressive. Yeah, I agree. I agree. Yeah, there's a lot. They don't even read newspapers, or anything. I don't know what they just scroll. That's what they do. They scroll. They watch TikTok videos. They scroll, and who else? I don't know what else they do. But anyways, it's been fun. This is gonna be a great collection in my shelf. I'm glad I collect books. Every book I read, I collect. I have like over 200 books, and I'm excited to. And anytime I put a book in a shelf, it's because I read it, and so I'm excited to include this one. It's a beast. Nice, Typhoneer. How funny. Pretty funny. That's true. That's a good point. There's a lot of miscued kind of propaganda type news out there anyways. Kind of brainwashes people. So in a way, they're kind of not missing much, I guess. I guess it's a double-edged sword. It's like you want to know what's going on in the world. You get all these different perspectives, and you try to make sense out of it. Funny. Manga is pretty fun. You guys ever read manga? I've only read like 2 or 3 of them. They're actually kind of fun. They're like printed from it's printed like backwards. The books are like this. It's kind of interesting. So, but they're fun. Apparently, I was watching this video that comics are in big trouble as far as sales go because manga has totally crushed it in sales. They have so many things in manga that's like 4 million in sales, 2 million in sales, 3 million in sales, and you go to like the American comics, and it's like not even comparable. It's so bad. It's kind of interesting. Oh, no kidding. Nice, nice, nice. But apparently, I guess like one of the biggest sales in comic books right now is Batman. Absolute Batman. You know, absolute so and so, absolute Deadpool and Batman. A Deadpool Batman movie could be weird, but it could if it's done right, it could be very interesting. But I think Batman, I mean Wolverine is irritated all the time by Deadpool, but I think Batman wouldn't even just he wouldn't allow it. He would just like he'd be done with Deadpool and just walk away. Yeah, it's like it's kind of interesting because manga is like it's not centered around heroes necessarily or action or anything like that. There's a lot of it's just like romance, sports. You can find some about fishing, although those aren't like the best sellers. What I got interested in manga was Dragon Ball Z. I would read Dragon Ball Z manga because I watched it as a kid and I really loved that show. And so later in my kind of like younger adult age, I would read them. They're quite fun. I remember you. Yeah, I remember you. Sure. What's going on? It's been a minute. I think didn't you use like a different one? I think at some point because for some reason, and then it looks like you got it back. Maybe. What's up, Katie? I think you're like the only female in the group right now. Anyways, Katie, this was the last read of the book. Honestly, I could. That would be kind of fun, actually. Uh, if you want to recommend one, I can try to look for one or something. Galaxy Train 999. Cool. That sounds really cool. I'm not gonna lie. That sounds pretty freaking cool. I'll give it a shot. I'll see if I can find one. I'll see if I can look around. I'll look at a bookstore, but if I can't find it, maybe I can order it online. But yeah, sure, that'd be fun. It'd be a lot of fun. Divergent. Divergent. Why does that ring a bell? Why does that ring a bell? But I can't put my finger on it. I guess I'm just hanging out with you guys now. Just hanging out. What are y'all doing? What are y'all doing tonight? Oh, Divergent is a young adult novel. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Very cool. I know it's a nerdy thing, like a really corny thing to say, but I freaking love reading. I absolutely love reading. And sometimes it can feel a bit of a waste of time, but not really. But at the same time, it's like my brain loves it. I can't help it. My brain loves reading. Post apocalypse world where people go into different factions based on their abilities. Oh, yeah, okay. Nice. 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 That sounds pretty cool. All right. Good job, you. We're doing a whole book report and everything. Pretty sweet. Who knows? Are you into YouTube? Like, do you make videos? Because I think there's like a niche where people do little book reviews. I don't know if you're ever interested in doing that, but yeah. I'm gonna think about the next book. I'm gonna think about the next book. I haven't really decided. I do have a new one. Like I was saying before, it's on how to finance a film, which is to me like more of an educational book. This was kind of educational, sorta, kind of biographical, kind of interesting insight into his life and what he's seen, what inspired him, his styles and everything. It's kind of so it's kind of educational in a way. But the finance book will be, you know, pretty heavy on business, I suppose. But trying to think of something public domain you could. Oh, like a book, like something really old. Yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there's some. Carson of Venus. Let me take a little snapshot of my phone. So I have that kind of written down. I'll do a little research. I'll poke around. I'll poke around and see what I can find. But yeah, it's been good, y'all. It's been good. Thanks for hanging out for a bit. I guess we haven't really talked in a while, huh? I'm gonna start doing like just hangouts for a while before I start reading again. So we just do some hangout, chit chat, whatever. But anyways, yeah, I guess I'll leave it at that and end it here. And I hope all of you have a great night and all that. And yeah, yeah, I'll see you soon. All right, y'all have a good one. Thanks for hanging out with me.